Hi there. Welcome to Melted Stone, the spot for stories that grab you and won't let you go. If you love drama, surprises, and moments that make you say, no way, you're in the right place. Subscribe and dive into tales full of twists, bold moves, and endings you'll remember. This is Melted Stone. Hit the bell and let's get the story rolling.
What is this?
The email arrived at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. No subject line. Just a link that made my stomach drop before I even clicked it. I should have deleted it. Should have rolled over and pretended the notification never buzzed my phone. But curiosity kills more than cats. It destroys marriages, careers, and whatever pathetic sense of security you thought you had. The video was grainy, shot from above. Security camera angle. The timestamp read 2 weeks ago, company anniversary week. I recognized the executive bathroom on the 15th floor immediately. Same marble counters, same pretentious gold fixtures Trevor Burke had installed when he became CEO. And there was my wife, Sienna, bent over the sink, skirt hiked up, getting railed by my former boss like some cheap office fantasy. The sound was crystal clear. Her moans, his grunts. The wet slapping that made my jaw clench so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I watched it 3 times. Not because I enjoyed it, because I needed to be sure. Needed to memorize every detail for what came next. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. 5 years of marriage, and I felt nothing but cold calculation spreading through my chest like ice water. The back injury that ended my construction career had taught me patience, pain management, how to function when everything inside you screams. This was just another kind of pain. I forwarded the video to a secure cloud drive, made copies, and started planning. The company summer party was in 2 days. Trevor would give his usual vision for the future speech to the entire staff. All 137 employees packed onto the rooftop terrace, drinks flowing, fake smiles plastered on faces that hated each other by Monday morning. Perfect audience. I spent the next 48 hours acting normal, kissed Sienna goodbye when she left for work, made coffee, reviewed permit applications for the city planning department, ate dinner across from the woman who'd been lying to my face for God knows how long. She was good at it, I'd give her that. No tells, no guilt, just the same manufactured smile she'd been using since her promotion to HR director 6 months ago. "How was your day?" she asked, cutting her chicken into precise little squares. "Boring. Yours?" "Trevor's been stressed about the party. You know how he gets." I knew exactly how he got. Apparently so did she. "You still planning to skip it?" she asked. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Something in my tone made her look up, but I was already reaching for the salt. The party started at 7. I arrived at 8:30, after most people had a few drinks in them, loose tongues, lowered inhibitions, the kind of atmosphere where shocking revelations hit harder. I wore my good suit, the charcoal gray one Sienna bought me for our anniversary. Ironic, considering what I was about to do with it. The rooftop terrace overlooked downtown Chicago, glass towers stretching toward a sky that threatened rain. String lights cast everything in warm amber, making the crowd look more attractive than they deserved. I recognized faces from my construction days, back when I managed projects instead of rubber stamping permits. They all nodded, smiled, shook my hand like nothing had changed. "Eli, good to see you, man. How's the permit life treating you?" "Sienna's doing great things in HR, if they only knew." I grabbed a beer and positioned myself near the AV setup. Trevor's assistant, Nora, was adjusting the microphone, her movements sharp and efficient. She was younger than most of the executives, maybe 29, with the kind of focused intensity that suggested she actually worked for her paycheck. "Testing, testing," Trevor's voice boomed across the terrace as he approached the podium. He looked exactly like what he was, a 46-year-old man who'd convinced himself that expensive suits and confident handshakes made him untouchable. The crowd quieted. Conversations died. All eyes turned toward the front. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trevor began, his voice carrying that practiced executive cadence, "I want to talk about vision. About the future we're building together." He clicked a remote. The large LED screen behind him displayed the company logo, Burke Construction Solutions in bold blue letters. This year, we've grown by 30%. We've expanded into 3 new markets. We've proven that with the right leadership, Anything is possible. Polite applause. A few whoops from the sales team. I moved closer to the AV setup, my hand slipping into my jacket pocket. The USB drive felt warm against my fingers. But growth isn't just about numbers, Trevor continued. It's about trust. It's about the relationships we build, the bonds that hold us together. The irony was almost too perfect. I caught Nora's eye and nodded toward the laptop controlling the display. She frowned, confused, but I was already moving. 5 years of construction sites had taught me how to work fast and quiet. The USB drive slid into the port without a sound. A few quick clicks and the company logo disappeared. Which is why I'm excited to announce Trevor's words died as the video began playing. Full screen, full volume, the timestamp, the marble counters, the gold fixtures. And my wife, bent over the sink, getting screwed by the man who was supposed to be talking about trust and relationships. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then someone gasped. Someone else dropped their drink. The glass shattered against the concrete, the sound sharp and final. Trevor spun around, his face going from confident to horrified in the space of a heartbeat. He lunged for the laptop, but I was already there, blocking his path. Problem, Trevor? The terrace erupted, people shouting, phones coming out. The video kept playing, Sienna's moans echoing across the rooftop while 137 employees watched their CEO's world collapse in real time. You son of a witch! Trevor swung at me, his fist aimed at my jaw. I'd been expecting it. Years of construction work had taught me to read body language, to anticipate when someone was about to do something stupid. I caught his wrist, twisted it just enough to make him wince, then drove my right hook into his face. The crack was audible even over the chaos. Trevor dropped like a sack of cement, crimson streaming from his nose. He hit the ground hard, his expensive suit scraping against the concrete. Security! Someone screamed. I didn't run, didn't resist when 3 men in black polo shirts tackled me to the ground. The laptop kept playing the video until someone finally yanked out the USB drive. Too late, the damage was done. They zip-tied my hands and called the police. I lay there on the rooftop, ribs aching from where they'd driven their knees into my back, watching Trevor get helped to his feet by his loyal employees. His nose was definitely broken. Good. You're done, he said, red liquid dripping onto his white shirt. You're freaking done. I smiled. We'll see. The cops arrived 20 minutes later. They read me my rights, loaded me into the back of a patrol car, and drove me to the station while my phone buzzed with calls and texts I couldn't answer. The booking process was exactly what you'd expect. Fingerprints, mugshot. A holding cell that smelled like disinfectant and bad decisions. I spent the weekend in county lockup, sharing space with drunks and small-time dealers who couldn't make bail. My ribs were definitely bruised, maybe cracked, but I'd had worse injuries falling off scaffolding. Monday morning, my lawyer posted bail. $5,000 for attack and battery, plus destruction of property for the broken laptop screen. Trevor's people had pressed every charge they could think of. I walked out of the station into gray October air, my suit wrinkled and stained, my back screaming from sleeping on a concrete bench. Nora was waiting by my car. You didn't get this from me, she said, pressing a flash drive into my palm. But you should know, you're not the only one he screwed over. She walked away before I could respond, disappearing into the morning commute like she'd never been there. I drove home to an empty house. Sienna had cleared out her things while I was locked up. No note, no explanation, just empty hangers in the closet and the faint smell of her perfume lingering in the bathroom. I made coffee and plugged in the flash drive. What I found made my previous discovery look like a parking ticket. Financial records, email chains, personnel files documenting years of maltreatment complaints that had been buried or dismissed. Women who'd been transferred to other departments after rejecting Trevor's advances. Men who'd been fired for asking too many questions about the company's accounting practices. And at the center of it all, a shell company called Midwest Development Partners. On paper, it was a legitimate construction supplier. In reality, it was Trevor's personal piggy bank, funneling company funds through fake invoices and inflated contracts. The fool had stolen almost $2 million over 3 years. I spent the next week building a case. Not for the police. They'd want evidence that would hold up in court, and I wasn't ready to hand over my leverage yet. This was for something bigger. I contacted Gideon Lane, a corporate litigation consultant who'd left Burke Construction after a falling out with Trevor 2 years ago. He agreed to meet at a diner on the south side, away from corporate ears. I always knew that prick was dirty, Gideon said, scanning the files on his laptop. But this is federal fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion. He's looking at 20 years minimum. What about the maltreatment? Harder to prove without the sufferers willing to testify. But if we can flip his assistant, get her to talk about what she's seen. Nora had already reached out through encrypted email. She wanted to meet. We chose a parking garage downtown, second level, Tuesday at noon. I arrived early, positioning myself with a clear view of the entrance. Old habits from construction sites. Always know your exits, always watch for trouble. She showed up exactly on time, looking nervous but determined. He fired me, she said without preamble. Monday morning. Said I was responsible for the security breach. Did you record that conversation? She smiled grimly and pulled out her phone. I've been recording everything for 6 months. Ever since he tried to corner me in the supply closet. We spent an hour going through her evidence. Trevor's threats, his attempts to buy her silence, his bragging about the shell company to impress her during what he thought was seduction. There's more, she said. Other women, former employees who'd probably testify if they knew others were coming forward. Can you get me their contact information? Already did. She handed me a printed list. But Eli, he's not going to just roll over. He's got connections, people who owe him favors. I learned what she meant the next night. I was walking to my car after a late dinner at Murphy's Tavern when they jumped me. 3 men in dark clothing, faces covered. They didn't say anything, just started swinging. I went down hard, my injured ribs screaming as a boot connected with my side. Another kick to my stomach. A fist to my jaw that made stars explode behind my eyes. But 5 years of physical therapy had taught me something about pain management, how to function when your body wanted to quit, how to find strength in desperation. The first attacker came at me with a pipe. I rolled left, grabbed a handful of gravel from the parking lot, and threw it in his face. He stumbled, cursing, and I drove my shoulder into his midsection. The second one pulled a knife. Big mistake. I'd been carrying a Glock 19 since my construction days, legally licensed and properly concealed. I drew it in one smooth motion, the barrel finding his center mass. Drop it. He dropped it. The third attacker was already running. I kept the tool trained on the 2 remaining men as I pulled out my phone and called 911. When the police arrived, I gave them a simple story. 3 men had attacked me. I defended myself with a legally carried firearm. No shots fired. The attackers claimed they were just mugging me, but when the police searched them, they found cash. A lot of cash. More than street criminals usually carried. I didn't press charges, didn't need to. The message was clear enough. The next morning, I received a call from Detective Evan Wolf, the officer assigned to my original attack case. Funny thing, he said. Those 3 guys from last night? They all have connections to a private security firm that does contract work for Burke Construction. Interesting coincidence. Yeah, real interesting. You want to tell me what's really going on here? I told him everything. The video, the financial records, the maltreatment complaints, Trevor's pattern of using intimidation and bribery to silence his sufferers. Why come to me now? Wolf asked. Because somebody tried to have me knocking up in a parking lot. That makes it personal. He studied the files for a long time, his expression growing darker with each page. This is good, he said finally. This is really good. But I need more. I need sufferers willing to testify. I need financial records that can be authenticated. And I need Trevor to do something stupid on the record. What kind of stupid? The kind where he threatens a witness. The kind where he tries to buy you off. The kind where he admits to crimes because he thinks he's untouchable. I smiled. I can arrange that. The plan was simple. I would contact Trevor directly, offer to negotiate a settlement for the attack charges. Make him think he was buying my silence. Get him to admit to the financial crimes and the maltreatment cover-ups, all while wearing a wire. We met at Rossini's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. Trevor arrived 10 minutes late, probably to establish dominance. He'd had his nose fixed, but the bruising was still visible under his makeup. Eli, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I have to say, I'm surprised you wanted to meet. We need to talk. About what? Your pathetic attempt to embarrass me? Your criminal attack on my person? I leaned forward. About the $2 million you've stolen from the company. About the women you've maltreated. About the fact that you sent 3 men to knock me up in a parking lot. His face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Midwest Development Partners. Ring a bell? Trevor's hand tightened around his water glass. You don't know what you're messing with? Enlighten me. You think you're some kind of hero? You think anyone cares about your little revenge fantasy? I own this city. I own the mayor's office. I own half the police department. You're nothing but a washed-up construction worker with a grudge. Maybe. But I'm a washed-up construction worker with evidence. Evidence can disappear. Witnesses can be convinced to change their stories. Accidents can happen. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. You drop this nonsense, take your settlement money, and disappear, or things get unpleasant for you. I pretended to consider it. How much money are we talking about? 50,000? Cash, tax-free. All you have to do is admit you fabricated the financial records and sign a non-disclosure agreement. And the maltreatment sufferers? What maltreatment sufferers? You mean the disgruntled employees who couldn't handle the pressure of a professional work environment? They'll find it's in their best interest to move on with their lives. You're admitting to bribing them? I'm admitting to nothing. I'm offering you a way out before you get hurt. The wire was getting everything. Every threat, every admission, every arrogant word from a man who thought he was untouchable. Let me think about it, I said. Don't think too long. My patience has limits. I left the restaurant and drove straight to the police station. Detective Wolf was waiting with a federal prosecutor and an FBI agent who specialized in corporate fraud. He took the bait, I said, handing over the recording device. They listened to the entire conversation, their expressions growing more satisfied with each passing minute. We can arrest him tonight, the prosecutor said. Wire fraud, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, tax evasion. He's looking at 25 years minimum. What about the maltreatment sufferers? Once word gets out that he's been arrested, they'll come forward. They always do when they know they're not alone. The arrest happened at 7 a.m. the next morning. FBI agents surrounded Trevor's mansion in Winnetka, battering down his door while he was still in his silk pajamas. The local news crews caught it all on camera. The perp walk, the handcuffs, the look of absolute shock on his face when he realized his connections couldn't save him. By noon, the story was everywhere. Construction CEO arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Sexual maltreatment allegations surface against Chicago business leader. Federal investigation reveals years of corporate corruption. The company's stock price collapsed. The board of directors held an emergency meeting and voted to fire Trevor immediately. His assets were frozen pending the federal investigation. I watched it all unfold from my living room, drinking coffee and reading the news reports on my laptop. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of thinking I knew the woman sleeping next to me every night, and it had all led to this moment. The doorbell rang at 2 p.m. I answered it to find Sienna standing on my porch, her eyes red from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in but didn't offer her a seat. We stood in the hallway like strangers, which I supposed we were. "I'm pregnant," she said. "Congratulations. It's not yours." I figured. He won't return my calls. His lawyer says he can't have any contact with company employees during the investigation. I waited for her to continue. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." "For which part? Cheating on me? Lying to my face for months? Or getting pregnant by a man who's going to spend the next 20 years in federal prison?" "All of it." "Okay. That's it? That's all you have to say?" I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married was still there, somewhere under the makeup and the professional facade and the lies, but she was buried so deep, I wasn't sure she could find her way back. "What do you want me to say, Sienna? That I forgive you? That we can work through this? That I understand why you decided to screw my boss instead of talking to me about whatever problems we were having? I want you to fight for us. There is no us. There hasn't been for a long time." She started crying again. "I made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. Over months. Don't insult my intelligence by calling it a mistake. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of not being alone. You love the idea of having someone to fall back on when your other options disappear, but you don't love me." I walked to the front door and opened it. "I think you should go." "Eli, please." "Go." She left without another word. I watched her drive away, then closed the door and went back to my coffee. The divorce papers arrived a week later. I signed them without reading them too carefully. Let the lawyers sort out the details. I had bigger things to worry about, like testifying before a federal grand jury. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Janet Morrison, walked me through my testimony 3 times before the actual hearing. The questions were straightforward. What did I know about Trevor's financial crimes? When did I know it? What evidence did I have to support my claims? The grand jury indicted Trevor on 17 federal charges. The maltreatment sufferers, 8 women in total, came forward with their own testimonies. The financial crimes were documented with bank records, email chains, and recorded conversations. It was airtight. The trial lasted 6 weeks. I testified on day 12, walking the jury through the evidence piece by piece. Trevor's lawyers tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, but the facts spoke for themselves. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Trevor Burke was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison. No parole, no work release, no country club minimum security facility. Hard time for a hard man. I was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Trevor's face went gray as the judge pronounced sentence. He looked around the room, his eyes finding mine in the gallery. I didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't react at all. Justice wasn't about satisfaction. It was about accountability. The civil suits came next. The maltreatment sufferers won substantial settlements from the company's insurance carrier. The shareholders sued for damages related to Trevor's financial crimes. The IRS launched their own investigation into his tax returns. I received my own settlement, wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. The company's new leadership wanted to put the whole mess behind them, and money was the easiest way to do it. 6 months after the trial, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing the final paperwork. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "I'm thinking about going back to construction, real construction, building things instead of tearing them down." "That's good. That's healthy." I walked out of the office into a bright spring morning. The city looked different somehow, cleaner, more honest. Or maybe I was just seeing it with clearer eyes. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news. Glad you got justice." And Nora. I typed back, "Thanks for the help. Thanks for finishing what we started." I deleted the conversation and kept walking. The past was the past. Time to build something new. I thought about Trevor, probably sitting in his cell right now, wondering how his perfect life had collapsed so completely, how a boring guy who shows up early had brought down his entire empire. He'd underestimated me. They all had. But I'd learned something important in those months of planning and executing my revenge. I'd learned that patience was a weapon, that information was power. That sometimes the best revenge wasn't about destroying your enemy, it was about letting them destroy themselves. Trevor Burke had built his success on lies and intimidation. In the end, those same lies and intimidation had been his downfall. I'd just provided the platform for him to hang himself. 2 years later, I was back in business. North Construction Solutions, a small operation focused on residential projects and commercial renovations. No corporate BS, no office politics. Just honest work for honest pay. I was on a job site reviewing blueprints with a client when I saw her. Sienna, walking across the parking lot with a toddler in her arms. She looked older, tired. The sharp edges of her professional image had been worn down by single motherhood and whatever job she'd managed to find after the scandal. She saw me and hesitated, like she was debating whether to approach. I saved her the trouble and walked over. "Hi," she said. "Hi." The kid was maybe 18 months old, with Trevor's eyes and Sienna's stubborn chin. He stared at me with the kind of frank curiosity that only small children possessed. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Good. You?" "Getting by. Working at a nonprofit downtown. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work." "That's good." An awkward silence settled between us. Traffic noise from the street, construction sounds from the job site, the normal rhythm of life continuing around us. "I think about what I did," she said finally. "What I threw away. Don't what? Don't do this. Don't make it about regret or second chances or what might have been. We both made choices. We both have to live with them." She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Really sorry." "I know. And I wanted you to know that you were right. About everything, about me, about him, about what love actually means. I looked at the kid in her arms. He was innocent in all of this, a sufferer of his parents' mistakes, but not responsible for them. Take care of him, I said. I will. I walked back to my job site, leaving her standing in the parking lot. I didn't look back. That night, I was in my office, reviewing contracts for the next day's work, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Eli North? Who's asking? My name is Detective Mills. I'm with the Illinois State Police. I'm calling about Trevor Burke. My blood went cold. What about him? He was found dead in his cell this morning. Apparent self-destruction. He left a note. I sat down slowly. What did it say? Just one line. Tell Eli North he won. We found your name in his personal effects. Thought you should know. I hung up and stared at my computer screen, the words blurring together. Trevor Burke was dead. The man who destroyed my marriage, stolen from his company, and maltreated God knows how many women had taken the coward's way out. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, closure, relief. Instead, I felt empty. I picked up my phone and called my sister Lana. She was a therapist now, working with trauma sufferers. We'd reconnected during the trial, and she'd helped me process the anger and betrayal that had nearly consumed me. Hey, she said. You okay? You sound weird. Trevor's dead. Oh, how do you feel about that? I don't know. I thought I would feel something. What did you expect? I don't know. Justice? Vindication? Some kind of ending? Life doesn't really have endings, Eli. Just transitions. We talked for an hour. She reminded me that my revenge hadn't been about destroying Trevor. It had been about protecting other people from him, about holding him accountable for his actions, about making sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. His end didn't change any of that. The next morning, I went to work. I had a house to renovate, a crew to manage, and a life to rebuild. Trevor Burke was gone, but the world kept turning, and I was still here. 3 months later, I was working late in my office when someone knocked on the door. I looked up to see a young woman standing in the hallway, maybe 25, with nervous energy and determined eyes. Mr. North? I'm Sarah Chen. I used to work for Burke Construction. I recognized the name from the maltreatment complaints. She'd been one of the sufferers who'd testified at the trial. What can I do for you? I wanted to thank you for what you did, for making sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. You don't need to thank me. You were brave enough to come forward. That's what made the difference. I got a job offer, she said. Good company, good pay. But they want references from my previous employer. I'm not sure what I can do about that. You know people. You have connections. I was hoping you might be willing to make a call. I looked at her for a long moment. She was smart, capable, and she'd been through hell. She deserved a chance to rebuild her life. Give me the details, I said. I made the call the next morning. Sarah got the job. That's when I realized something important. My revenge against Trevor Burke hadn't ended with his conviction or his passing. It was still happening every time one of his sufferers found the courage to move forward. Every time the company implemented new policies to prevent maltreatment. Every time someone refused to be intimidated by powerful men who thought they were untouchable. The real victory wasn't destroying Trevor. It was building something better in his place. 5 years after the trial, I was standing in the lobby of a new office building, admiring the craftsmanship of the marble floors and the precision of the steel framework. North Construction Solutions had grown into a mid-sized company with 40 employees and projects across 3 states. Mr. North? A young man approached, probably fresh out of college. I'm Jake Morrison. I'm starting as a project manager next week. Welcome to the team. I wanted to thank you for taking a chance on me. I know my resume isn't the strongest, but I promise I'll work hard. That's all I ask. He walked away and I smiled. Janet Morrison, the prosecutor who'd put Trevor away, had called me about her nephew. He was a good kid, she'd said, smart and honest. Just needed someone to give him a chance. I was happy to do it. That's what real power looked like. Not intimidation or corruption or the ability to destroy people's lives. Real power was the ability to build something lasting, to create opportunities for others, to leave the world a little better than you found it. Trevor Burke had never understood that. He'd thought power meant taking whatever you wanted and crushing anyone who got in your way. In the end, that philosophy had destroyed him. I'd learned a different lesson. I'd learned that the best revenge wasn't about bringing your enemies down to your level. It was about rising above them entirely. I walked out of the building into the afternoon sun, thinking about the future, about the projects we'd build, about the lives we'd touch, about the legacy we'd leave behind. Trevor Burke was gone, but his sufferers were still here, still fighting, still building, and that was enough. That evening, I was at home, grilling dinner on my back patio, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a familiar name, Detective Wolf. Eli, you might want to turn on the news. I walked inside and flipped to the local station. The anchor was reading from a teleprompter, her expression serious. Federal investigation into the Burke construction scandal has resulted in additional arrests today. 4 former city officials have been charged with accepting bribes in exchange for favorable zoning decisions and construction permits. The investigation, which began with the arrest of company CEO Trevor Burke 5 years ago, has now expanded to include allegations of systemic corruption affecting multiple government agencies. The story continued, but I'd heard enough. The ripple effects were still spreading. Trevor's network of corruption was still being exposed, one arrest at a time. Thought you should know, Wolf said. Your testimony helped break this whole thing open. I'm glad it's finally over. Is it ever really over? Good question. I hung up and went back to my dinner. The steak was perfectly cooked, the beer was cold, and the evening was quiet. Simple pleasures for a simple man. But I wasn't the same man who'd received that anonymous email 6 years ago. That man had been naive enough to think that revenge was about getting even, about making your enemies pay for what they'd done to you. I'd learned that real revenge was about making sure they couldn't do it to anyone else. The end.